How to use a jigsaw. Before I use the jigsaw, I'm going to inspect it. And the three parts I'm going to inspect are the housing, the cord, and the blade. I'm checking the housing for any cracks or missing parts, especially around the motor area. I'm going to unwrap it and look at the cord. And I can see that this cord has had a fray in it that has been repaired, especially focusing on either end near the plug and where it comes out of the saw where the reinforcement is. I'm going to check my blade. This one's a little bent, so I'm going to straighten it before I use it. Make sure it's not too dull. My blade is good. Now when I get ready to use the jigsaw, the first thing I'm going to do is check for PPE. Make sure I have my safety glasses, long pants, closed-toed heeled shoes. I'm going to make sure the trigger lock is not engaged, and there's the trigger lock. What you currently do is, if you'll hit the trigger, it releases it. If you can hear the little sound, trigger lock is engaged. Now when I push the trigger, it will release the trigger lock. Trigger lock's not engaged. Make sure my material's secure, and I'm going to mark it. I'm going to come 1 inch from the end of the board. Going to draw a square line. Going to cut off a 1 inch block. Going to choose the correct blade. I have here a 10 teeth per inch wood blade. It's pretty aggressive. It's a little T-head. Now I'm going to secure it into the saw. As before, there's the lever to release the blade. Need to make sure that the teeth are facing forward or away from the motor. Releases and locks it in place. Now I'm ready to plug it in. Now when I get ready to cut, I'm going to align the base and the blade here with my mark. One thing you have to make sure you do is make sure you hold the saw flat. You don't want to rock it up or rock it down. Makes a weird cut, or either lay it to one side or the other. On the side here, I have turned the selector all the way up to the 3 mark. That makes it a more aggressive cut because I'm just trying to make a rough cut. If I was doing something along the lines of more finished carpentry or something that I was trying to keep the edges prettier, because when this blade cuts through, it's going to make this edge real rough on the cut. I would turn it down closer to the 0 mark. But we're making a single rough cut. I'm going to turn it to the 3. Makes it go a lot faster. Now I'm aligning my base plate. I'm looking at it. I'm making sure I'm flat, that the base is going to slide flat across the top of the surface. I use my left hand to help me line up. Eventually I'm going to move my left hand to here once I start my cut, but I generally start with using my fingers to help align, because you've got 2 sides to this cut. I want this 1 inch block. This is over here is my waste side. And I'm not worried about the waste. It's what I'm going to throw away. So when I cut, I'm going to cut with the blade from the waste side and not cut on what I want left. I'm going to start the cut, hold it flat. I'm going to pass through, and once I get all the way past through, I'm going to release the trigger. I'm going to come over here and unplug it. Then I'm going to drop the blade. You start slow to make sure you're straight, and then once you get it going, then you can speed up and keep going. Remember, this has a variable speed trigger. The little dial under here that you can turn. Here's the difference between that and that. What it is a limiter on how fast you can set the trigger to go, and you just turn the little dial there. All the way through. Going to unplug my saw. Going to remove the blade. Set it aside. I'm going to pick up the 1-inch block that I cut, set it aside. Now that I'm finished, I've got to perform a little maintenance on my jigsaw. One, I want to make sure it's clean. Generally, I just blow them off, make sure it's dry, which happens most of the time, should not be a hard one. Now I'm also going to go back and check the blade. Many times with a jigsaw, when you're cutting, the blade's going to jump up if you're not careful, and it'll bounce right back down into the wood. It'll actually bend these blades. If that happens, stop, unplug it, take the blade out, take a pair of tongue and groove pliers, and you can grab a hold to it, and you can actually bend the blade back straight. You probably don't want to do it with your fingers if you've been cutting a while, because as you know, this gets very hot. Lay the blade aside. Now that I've checked everything, and I'm going to wrap my jigsaw up. The last wrap I make will bring the end of the cord up through so that it stays secure. That is how to use a jigsaw. Now what I want to see from you is a video after you've practiced many times. I want to see the 3 points of inspection. I want to see and hear the 8 steps on how you use it. I want to see you draw the mark at 1 inch. I want to see you line and cut from the waist side of the board. And then when you're finished, I want to make sure that you unplug it, take the blade out of it, make sure it's clean and dry, and that the blade is not bent, and then wrap the saw back up properly for storage. Upload that video back to Google Classroom.